So I want to talk about something that I think a lot of people might disagree with me on, and that's fine. But I just want you to hear me out because I genuinely think that this is something that not many people are really saying, and I think you really might be able to benefit from it. With that being said, I think that doing more is actually making your life worse instead of better. And I don't mean that in some lazy, just give up kind of way, right? That's not what this is at all. What I more so mean is the specific thing that hustle culture has sold to an entire generation of people is that the solution to your problems is always to add more, and to add more habits and routines and goals and more discipline, and to wake up earlier, go to bed later, lose sleep, stack your morning routine as much as possible, go to the gym every day, read, journal, get a side hustle, start a business, and all the plethora of different things that people try to present to you that will improve your quality of life and get you out of a slump and get you to stop being lazy. Um, and for a while, I bought into this completely, and I really tried to live that type of way. And I'm sure if you're watching this, you probably have too, and you may still are, maybe you are currently. And I want to talk about what it actually did to me because I don't think the conversation about or around this is honest enough. So I want to start from the beginning. About 2 years ago, I was in this place where I kind of felt like my life just wasn't really where I wanted it to be, and I couldn't really put my finger on exactly what was wrong. But I just had this general feeling, like always, I should be doing more, and I should be further in my life than I am right now. And just I knew something needed to change, but I didn't know really what that thing was. So I did pretty much what everybody else does. I went on YouTube. I started consuming content about self improvement, like super red pill content, hustle culture type videos about productivity and discipline and all that. And within like a week, I had this insane list of things that I was going to start doing. I was going to wake up at 5 a.m. every day. I was going to work out every single day. I was going to read for at least 30 minutes every morning and journal and meditate, cut out all junk food completely, all soda completely. I was going to begin a side hustle, limit my phone usage and track my calories and my cardio and my steps and take nothing but cold showers. I'm sure you've either lived this type of lifestyle or I've heard of something similar if you're watching this. And for a couple weeks at the beginning, I felt super fired up, like I was finally going to become the person that I wanted to be, and I finally had it figured out, and all of the negativity and bad things in my life was finally going to go away. But then, of course, reality hit, and because trying to maintain all of those different things at the same time, I was also still living my actual life in high school and working and maintaining my relationship and friendships and trying to enjoy my hobbies and enjoy my life a little too at the same time, just like any regular human being. You start dropping things one by one. First, it was journaling and reading because I ran out of time and I couldn't stick to it and I didn't really enjoy it. And then cold showers because some days you might be running late, you miss one, and then you hate the feeling of it, and you miss the warmth, so you miss another, and then slowly those habits start to diminish. And then after that, once you're starting to drop those habits one by one, what do you do, right? You go back to YouTube and you watch another video about discipline and motivation, and you think you're just not going hard enough, and you just don't want it bad enough, and you're just not disciplined enough. So you make another list and you try to reiterate, and you try again and again, and the cycle just inevitably repeats itself over and over. And I did this like countless times, like 10 plus times, before I actually kind of, I guess you would say, let go of that way of thinking and stopped and asked myself, what is actually going on here? Why can't I stick to anything? Because clearly the strategy isn't working, right? If I had the answers to my problems, I thought it was to just do more things. And if that was the answer, to all my problems, I would have fixed my life right then and there. It would have been over with, and I wouldn't be making this video. But I think the answer is something that the self improvement industry doesn't really want to talk about because it's bad for business, right? This is all, you know, people who make those types of videos or sell those courses and sell that idea, they gain something from it. Um, but my idea is that adding things doesn't really fix your life at all. If those things are if the things that are draining your life are still there. And just think about it for a second, right? It's like having a bucket with a hole in it, and instead of fixing the hole, you just keep pouring more and more and more water. You're just stuck wondering why it's not staying full. Because if the water, sorry, that you're adding is good water, like going to the gym, reading, journaling, waking up early, all that's good, and there's nothing wrong with that inherently. Those are all good things that you should do. It's not going to hurt you inherently. But when you're isolated and you have true like flaws and negativity and other things, those don't really weigh them out. It doesn't really get rid of it. That hole is still going to be in the bucket. Remember when you have those habits and patterns, situations in your life that are actively draining you and draining your energy and your time and just your mental fortitude, then no amount of adding good things on top of them is going to fix any underlying issues that are going on in your life. It's basically just like doing more on top of a broken foundation. And this is the thing I had to figure out the hard way, right? I was so focused on adding more and trying to do more good things that I never actually dealt with the stuff that was holding me back. So let me get specific because I think this is where it actually gets useful. For me personally, there were a few things that were genuinely draining my life that I just kept not dealing with because dealing with them was extremely uncomfortable and I didn't really know how. And I thought I just kind of could outbeat them with discipline and willpower and trying to get rid of them by just doing more good things. But one of the most consistent issues in my life was my sleep. I had very bad insomnia, had a lot of big issues with sleeping, getting enough sleep, sleeping for amounts of time. Even when I was getting sleep, I didn't feel like I was. I was staying up late every single night, just scrolling mindlessly, not even doing anything enjoyable, just kind of like in zombie land on my phone until like 4 or 5, sometimes 6 or 7 in the morning. I was supposed to wake up and go to school and go to work, and I would literally have no sleep to run on. I kind of just feel like I was in this state where every day was just blending constantly. I wasn't really in charge of my life. And the second thing was a lot of the people I was spending a lot of my time with, and the things I was doing while spending time with those people. Nobody really wants to say it out loud, but there are a lot of people in my life, and there may be people in your life that you're thinking of when you hear this, who are just constantly bringing negative energy and draining you. Um, every single time you hang out with them, every single moment you spend with them, you just feel worse afterwards. You feel worse knowing that your time could be better spent elsewhere. And I just kept absorbing that and wondering why my energy was so low all the time, and why I never had drive or ambition to really do anything more. Um, and the last thing I would say is just how much time I was spending just consuming content between YouTube, TikTok, whatever it may be. I was spending like 4 or 5 hours a day just constantly, just mindlessly, not even thinking, just doom scrolling, watching YouTube video after YouTube video, and thinking that I was doing myself a favor by watching self improvement content or videos that were motivational or that felt like it was lighting the spark within me that I was going to finally fix my life. But it never actually prompted me to take charge and actually do anything. Uh, Ultimately, the only thing that I truly was doing was just sitting there watching videos. There was no action behind it. Um, and none of the stuff that I came up with on a morning routine checklist, right? None of the hustle content I was consuming was telling me to look at these things because, self-improvement content or whatever you want to call it doesn't, really make money by telling you to do less or to cut out the things that are draining you, or to have those honest conversations with yourself about what's actually wrong. They want to sell you the idea, sell you the course or the action or the business model, and to try to just add more and do more as much as you possibly can. Um, and I think there's almost something intentional about that. Or like if you fix your life, you stop consuming content so much, and so the content kind of has this weird incentive to it to keep you in a state of almost here but not quite. Um, and it kind of sounds kind of a similar idea to what I was talking about with my first video about the red pill content. It's kind of the same mechanism, just in different sort of packaging. And so what actually worked for me was this is a part I kind of want to spend a little bit more time on because I don't just want to be constantly complaining. I kind of want to tell you kind of where this prompted me to go. What worked was doing the opposite of what every piece of self-improvement content tells you to do. Instead of asking what I can add in my life and what I can be doing more, I started asking what I can remove and what I can get rid of. And I want to be clear about this. This isn't about being lazy or giving up on growth, right? This is about being honest with yourself and what is actually taking up space in your life and deciding whether it deserves to take up that space. So I made a list, right, of but instead of things that I wanted to do and things I wanted to add, I started to make a list of the things that were draining me, the things that were negatively impacting me, and the negative habits that I wanted to get rid of. And I mean, everything: habits, situations, relationships, friendships, time. You know, things that were the obligations in my life that I was doing out of boredom or just filling up my day, even though when I didn't really intentionally feel like I wanted to, but I just had to or I felt obligated to. And this is where it gets interesting because replacing a bad habit is so much harder than just adding a good one from scratch. But I do think it is a very underrated way of thinking about things. When I say it's harder, what I basically mean is that it's easy to pick up a new habit during that spark of 2 a.m. motivation where you watch a self-improvement video and you decide, you're going to make a new routine and you're going to start this new thing and you're finally going to have it all figured out. And for a while, getting on your feet and starting those things, I'm not saying it's easy by any means. Obviously, starting something new can always be intimidating, it can be hard. At least it is for me. But when you have addictions and you have things that are negatively impacting you and you have those deep-rooted habits in your brain, getting rid of something like that is much, much harder than it is to just add a new habit out of motivation. Now, sticking to that habit, on the other hand, is very challenging. When it comes to picking up whether it's going to the gym or something like that. Like, as someone who constantly goes to the gym multiple times a week now, being able to get to this point where I'm able to stick to that and do that, it took a very long time. So by no means do I think that creating a new habit is easy, but in comparison to trying to get rid of an addiction or a negative habit that your brain has formed to doing and that you're used to doing every single day without consciously thinking about it, trying to get rid of that is much, much harder. And that's why I think it's so much more impactful because we're feeling but we're feeling the hole in the bucket, as I mentioned earlier, right? Which will put us in a position to be able to actually fill the bucket with more positive things once we've been able to patch that hole. But to kind of give you an idea of what this might look like, say you're already doing something every morning, right? Say you're making coffee, and in that moment, it already exists in your day. And if you're currently making coffee while scrolling on your phone mindlessly for 20 minutes, you can replace the scrolling with something better. But the coffee is still the root trigger that takes up a time slot every day, every single day. That moment already exists. You don't have to get rid of that. But say if you're trying to get rid of doom scrolling and you're trying to limit your phone usage and you have a phone addiction and that's something that you want to work on, you have to notice the time slots in your day when you are unconsciously doing it, right? You have to reflect because in that moment you're not thinking about it, so it's going to be a lot harder to catch it and stop yourself. So you have, in the moments when you are being aware, you have to reflect and you have to review your day, and think about those moments when you're unconsciously doing it, so that next time, once that moment comes up again, say like the coffee, like say that's the trigger, next time you're going to be more aware to the fact that, okay, my mind is going to want to lead towards getting my phone to doom scroll during that moment, and then you can consciously grab it and choose to do something better. But that's the whole thing. And I know it sounds almost too simple, right? Like, this isn't the secret that the productivity gurus are missing, but I think it is a start, because like I mentioned earlier, the productivity content industry complex is kind of built on this idea that you need more structure and more discipline and more willpower. But what I've actually found, at least in my own life, is that I needed less of the wrong things, and the right things kind of fell into place naturally once the draining stuff wasn't taking up all the space, right? Because if you think about it, it makes sense naturally, right? If you're getting rid of the things that are draining you, whether it be addictions, bad habits, negativity, self-destructing. Once you get rid of those things in your life, naturally you're going to fill those holes with more positive things. You're going to be naturally your ambition, your drive, and your intuition to want to be drawn to peace instead of negativity is going to improve. But just to give you another example, like I mentioned earlier, I had a really big issue with my sleep and my insomnia, and I was staying up till 5, 6 in the morning, not getting any sleep for multiple days at a time sometimes. And I tried for months to kind of fix this by trying to set a new sleep schedule and setting alarms and going to bed earlier and going to bed at the same time every single night and putting my phone across the room. And trying to do a whole wind down nightly routine and limiting my phone usage before bed, like the whole thing. If you're someone who's dealt with insomnia and tried to fix your sleep schedule, this is probably all different things that you've tried to do as well. And I kind of just asked myself, after months and months of nothing changing, and kept reverting back to this habit of staying up to absurd amounts of times every single night and not being able to really fix it. So I kind of reflected on it and asked myself, honestly, why am I staying up this late? And the real answer that I kind of found was that the only time in my day that I felt like was mine, and had full control over what I was able to do, was the nighttime. Because during the day I had obligations and responsibilities and things that I had to do, things that I didn't want to do. And late at night was the only time in my day where nothing was asked of me or required of me. It was the only time that I could just exist without any pressure. And once I understood that, I realized the problem wasn't that I had bad sleep discipline, or the true problem was that my days were so full of obligations and things that I had to do, that staying up late was the only way to allow myself to have any type of breathing room. So the fix wasn't to add more discipline or a better sleep schedule, or um, waking up absurd waking up at absurd early hours. It was to actually allow myself to have some breathing room during my days, and to allow myself room to do things that actually fulfilled me and gave me enjoyment and fulfillment, so that nighttime didn't feel like the only time that I could actually get that out of my life. But it's such a different solution, right? Like, you would never really get there just by adding more things and adding more habits. And so you actually took a moment to look, at the reasons why you're doing things that are negatively impacting you. And that's kind of the whole point and the idea of this. Hustle culture is not the answer to your life. Being drawn to the idea of just trying to add more and willpower it, it's not going to get you anywhere. It may, get you going, but it's not going to keep you consistent. It's not going to help you cross that finish line and achieve the things you actually want to achieve. But I think for a lot of people, the actual answer is to slow down. And slow down enough to be able to figure out, what's actually draining you, what's actually negatively impacting your life, and what things, do you feel guilty about? Do you feel ashamed about every single time you do them, and you think and you know to yourself that, my time could be spent doing so much better things. And if, say, addiction wasn't a problem or habit wasn't a problem, what would I get rid of right now, with any repercussions? Because I think that's the foundation of where you should start at. Obviously it's not going to be easy. Trying to get rid of an addiction or negative habits that our brains are wired to do is very challenging. That's a lot, like I said earlier, it's a lot more challenging than just trying to add something new. But that's why I think it's so crucial. Because fixing the foundation doesn't look like hustle or willpower, but it's honesty. It looks like being honest about the habits that are actually hurting you and deciding to replace them one at a time. It looks like being honest about the relationships that are draining you and deciding what to do about that. And if those relationships are actually benefiting your life at all. And none of that is glamorous, content, right? Like, nobody's really making a YouTube video talking about how they finally cut out all the draining stuff and slowed down their life and really had to be a little bit more boring, and how it impacted their life over the next 6 months or a year, because that's how long it could take, honestly, and that's the boring part about it. But growth is going to look boring at a lot of times, and it's going to be very uncomfortable, but that's what actually works, and that's what it truly takes. And so I guess I want to leave you with this. Next time that you feel the urge to overhaul your life and fix all the different things and make a new routine and a new schedule, instead of doing that, just take a minute to breathe and reflect and slow down. And instead of thinking about the things you want to add, think about the things that you want to remove. And that's where you should start. And just take a minute to pause and think to yourself, what is actually draining me right now? Now should you be adding, but what is actually taking up space and energy and time that is not serving you? Because I think if you're honest about that, that's where you should start. And then everything else becomes a hell of a lot easier. But anyways, that's all I have for today. If you made it this far, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace.